All right, so I know in our last section we talked about irrational and rational numbers. And I know that it was confusing for some of you. So I made this little table and it kind of helps guide us a little bit more on what goes on or how to classify the numbers. So think about a number. So let's say the number is, I don't know, negative 3.766, and the 6 repeats. Okay, so let's go down the system. Is it a whole number? Is it a whole number? No, right? No. So we keep on going. Is it a fraction? Yes. And if it was yes, then you can answer all of those questions. It's no. Is it a decimal? Yes. Does it terminate or end? No. Does it repeat? Yes. So it's rational. If it didn't repeat, then it would have been irrational. So that's kind of how you use this chart. So I find this to be very helpful. And if you get all the way down here, that means that you missed something and you should try your system again. Okay? So it kind of helps us narrow down, is it rational or irrational? Just to hunker down that definition. Some of you may be thinking, but I already remember this. And that's okay. We're just testing your skills a little bit more. And the main thing is example 3, which is what we're talking about here. But let's just do a couple more examples. Example 1, determine whether each problem is rational or irrational. Write an R. If rational, write an R. If irrational, write an I on the line. All right, so whole numbers. Are whole numbers rational or irrational? We'll consult your chart. Hopefully you're saying whole numbers are rational. They're an R. Non-perfect square roots. Non-perfect square roots are irrational. Non-repeating decimals. Non-repeating decimals are irrational. Pi. What is pi? Well, it's a decimal. Does it repeat? No. Does it end? No. So it's a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal, so it's irrational. Did you get the gist here? So I want you to do 5 through 17. So do 5 through 17. So pause the video and try those on your own for me. All right, so hopefully you got that 5 was irrational, 6 is rational, 7, the square root of 400 is 20. Doesn't matter if it's negative or not, so that's rational. 10 is irrational. 12 and 13 rational. 14 irrational. 15, 16, 17 all rational. With 17, remember all fractions are rational. Okay, so let's scroll down to example 2. So determine if each number is rational or irrational and choose the correct explanation. So this is the part we didn't do before. We just had to classify them. But this time you have to choose the right reason why. So 31 over 99. Is that rational or irrational? Well, it's a fraction. All fractions are what? All fractions are rational numbers. So the answer is then going to be B because it's rational. And then because it's a fraction. Okay, so it's B because it's a fraction. The square root of 50. But what is the square root of 50? If you plug that into your calculator, it's going to give you some decimal. So that tells me that it's a non-perfect square, right? Because a perfect square should be equal to a whole number. So it's irrational. Irrational means it could be C or D, right? But it's irrational because it's not a perfect square. So it's C. It's not a perfect square. All right. I want you to try number 3 on your own. So just work it out right now. Don't pause. Just keep on going. Just work it out. I'll give you a couple seconds. I'm going to start crossing out things if you're stuck. So this is a rational number, so it's not D, it's not C, because those are irrational. And it's not an integer. So hopefully you chose B as your answer, because it's a terminating decimal. And terminating decimals are rational. All right. Let's go down to example 3. First thing is you're going to need a calculator for this one. So this is like the first time you're going to need a calculator. We have to order them from least to greatest. From least to greatest. So what's helpful here is to convert everything to a decimal. So convert everything to a decimal. I would probably round to the hundredths place. So convert to a decimal and round to the hundredths place. So in your calculator, type the square root of 5 and the square root of 8 and what 2.5 is. So the square root of 5 is 2.24. 3 just stays 3. Negative 2.5 becomes negative 2.5. And then we have the square root of 8. The square root of 8 is 2.83. So now we have to order these numbers from least to greatest. So what's the smallest number? Well, it's the negative, right? So smallest is negative 2.5. Then what comes next? What's the next smallest number? Hopefully you're saying the square root of 5. And we always write it in the original terms. Always write it in the original terms. What comes next? What's the next smallest number? Hopefully you said the square root of 8. And then last one, 3. So 3 is the greatest. All right, so I want you to try letter B all on your own. So I'm going to pause and you can try B. All right, so hopefully you got 2/10, 22%, 0.3, and then pi. Pi was kind of an out there number. So again, just make sure you're ordering them from least to greatest. All right, so there's your homework down at the bottom, so get going on that.